How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Hip Drop Podcast. Lucas and I are back. It is officially the NFL postseason. The regular season is done. Lucas and I did not do a recap episode because Week 18, with the exception of that insane Steelers-Ravens game to cap off the regular season, is a lot of glorified preseason, a lot of backups. The Raiders and the Chiefs set the sport of football back literally to before it was invented in the late window. That was the worst game I've ever seen. We're not going to speak of that game again. We're actually not going to speak of the Chiefs until after the Super Bowl because they don't deserve it because they did not make the playoffs. They won 6 games this year. So the Chiefs can wait. But Lucas, the playoffs are here. They start this afternoon. How you doing? How you feeling?
Feeling pretty good. Feeling pretty excited. I've been under the weather the past couple of days, so
Yeah.
feeling a little bit better now, but ready to get back on the grind. And I'm not excited for these playoffs because the Chiefs aren't in it, but I am excited in the sense that I don't really
Something
think
new.
this is going to be I don't think this is going to be a predictable playoff. Like I've been saying it for the last 3 months. You get a test. I think this is another year we get a weird seeding matchup in the Super Bowl. I don't think
Yeah.
we'll get a one versus one or a 1-2.
Yeah, I'm more than ready for Panthers Chargers facing off in Santa
Oh yeah,
Clara. So yeah, I mean, I went out to the bars last night, so I wasn't feeling the best this
me
morning
too. Yeah,
either, but I'm pulling
me
through.
too. Yeah,
I'm pulling through. So
same
for
here.
anybody who is unaware, this is the playoff schedule before Luke's and I get into our analysis. So today, this afternoon, to start the postseason, the Carolina Panthers host the Los Angeles Rams on Fox, and then tonight, for the third time in a month, the Chicago Bears, the 2 seed Chicago Bears host the number 7 seed Green Bay Packers on Prime Video, and then we have a triple header tomorrow in the early window. The 3 seed Jacksonville Jaguars host the number 6 seed Buffalo Bills on CBS. In the late afternoon, the number 3 seed and defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles host the number 6 seed San Francisco 49ers on Fox. And then the nightcap tomorrow, the number 2 seed New England Patriots play host to the number 7 seed Los Angeles Chargers on NBC. And then to cap off wildcard weekend on Monday night, the number 4 seed Pittsburgh Steelers will take on the number 5 seed Houston Texans on ESPN. So that is the wild card slate. Of course, the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks have clinched the number 1 seeds. The Seattle beat the Niners, which Lucas and I both predicted incorrectly. And Denver is getting the 1 seed. All they needed to do was beat Trey Lance and the Chargers backups. It was a lot harder than we expected, but they did it. So they get a first round bye. But before we get to the playoff matchups, which we'll obviously get to later on, Black Monday and then Black Tuesday and then Black Thursday all took place. 6 coaches have been relieved of their duties since the season ended. Of course, you had Brian Callahan and Brian Dable during the season. So there are currently 8 head coaching vacancies. So the first one on Sunday, we'll just go each one in order here, our reactions to it. This one, Lucas, honestly kind of surprised me, given the way this team has played over the last month. But before the end of the day on Sunday, we didn't even get to Black Monday. The day of the game, the Falcons fired Raheem Morris after 2 seasons. They went 8-9 both years, in both seasons in which they had reasonable expectations to win the division or at least make the playoffs. And the Falcons, I just think for Raheem, I predicted they'd bring him back because they were on a 4-game winning streak to end the season. You know, they had that big win over the Rams on Monday Night Football to make the optics of their season look much better. And then they capped it off by beating the Saints at home. Panthers fans thanked them for that. But I just think it was too little too late for Raheem. They were 4-9. They lost to a woeful Jets team. They lost to Carolina earlier in the year, and the Panthers were not playing well, 30-0. They lose to Miami when Miami was just absolutely dead in the water. They get blown out by them at home. I just think the Falcons had too many bad moments. They let Bryce Young throw for over damn near 500 yards against them. I just think the Falcons had too many bad moments this year to bring Raheem Morris back. And then we combined last year, in which, look, everyone and their mother was predicting that team to win the division last year, and they didn't even win 9 games. Like they had a big division lead, they choked it away. I think it was the right move. I didn't see it coming. Raheem Morris is going to be a really good defensive coordinator somewhere. Seems like a really good guy. Obviously that clip of him aura farming against the Buccaneers when they beat him on Thursday Night Football has gone viral. So like he's a good guy to have in the locker room, but I just don't think he's a very good head coach, and that's been proven over multiple stops. It was true in Tampa, and now it's been proven true in Atlanta because I think that team had too much talent to go 16-18 over 2 years.
I agree. Like I was in the boat that I would not bring Raheem Morris back, but I thought Arthur Blank would.
Anymore.
And full credit to Arthur Blank that he did not fall into the trap of, oh, we went on a 4-game winning streak to end the season, so we just need to bring Raheem Morris back because he played well in meaningless games. Full credit to Arthur Blank for not falling into that trap, realizing if they just would have beat the Jets, they would have been in the playoffs. But
They'd
they
be
lost.
playing today. They'd be hosting the Rams
Exactly.
today if they beat the Jets.
Exactly. And I think I also credit for Arthur Blank for using the entire sample size rather than just 4-game winning streak at the end of the year where we beat one playoff team. So like we're done. But they forgot just before this winning streak, they lost 37-9 to the Seahawks. I know Seattle's the number 1 seed, but a 28-point loss at home when you're a team that's trying to make the playoffs is objectively embarrassing. And then losing to the Jets is even more objectively embarrassing. So credit to Arthur Blank for not falling victim to this mirage of a winning streak when the team was basically eliminated and looking at the full sample size and making the best decision for his team.
Oh, for sure. And I think with the exception of Baltimore, obviously, we'll get to them later on. I'd argue this is the best head coach opening. Now they have some uncertainty at quarterback because Penix, A, really hasn't shown that much to his at this point in his career. B's coming off a pretty substantial injury. Cousins is still under contract. He played decent at times this year. Other times looked like he should be retired. So I don't know what you do at quarterback, but the roster 2 through 53, I think is pretty good. They were second in sacks this year, behind only Denver. Obviously, they have the best running back in football in Bijan Robinson. They have Kyle Pitts, who finally took the next step this year. He was named to the second team All-Pro team this morning. So good for Kyle Pitts. Drake London's an excellent receiver. Their offensive line is solid. It's decent. It's a respectable offensive line. So it's a team that has some pieces, and it would be a decent spot for a head coach candidate. All right, Lucas, let's go to the Cleveland Browns. They were the next team to make a move. The Browns finished the season 5-12. They win rather their last 2 games of the season to kind of juice that record a bit, and they move on from Kevin Stefanski after 6 seasons. I mean, 6 seasons is a long time. Like that's the longest a coach has lasted in Cleveland in a while, and in quite some time, really throughout my lifetime. Stefanski in Cleveland had some really good moments. They went to the playoffs twice. They won a playoff game against the Steelers in his first year there in the wild card round. And then, of course, in 2023, with 800 quarterbacks, they win 11 games. They get the 5 seed. And then the other years there, they go 8-9 in 2021. They go 7-10 in 2022. Last year was just an abject catastrophe. They go 3-14. And then this year, with the exception of, I mean, their defense is good, but from an offensive standpoint, a very bare cupboard of talent. They managed to win 5 games despite poor quarterback play across the board. So Stefanski, he's a 2-time coach of the year. I feel like got the most out of a bad situation. The Browns, I would argue, you can make the argument they're the worst organization in the league. You could argue Jimmy Haslam's the worst owner in the league. They've had little to no success ever since Haslam bought the team. So I think Stefanski did what he could. I think he's a good coach. I think he's getting another head coaching job here shortly. But I understand why they made the move because I think Stefanski is too good of a coach to be coaching Cleveland. They somehow brought Andrew Berry back. I understand the Browns had a really good draft this year. I get it. But I think Andrew Berry has a big role to play for how that team has fallen off from a playoff team just 2 years ago to a team that's won 8 games in 2 years. He's the one who made the Deshaun Watson trade. Watson is still on the roster. But this move was expected. I saw it coming. I agree with it from the sense that like Stefanski was there too long and probably should be coaching somewhere else that's really serious about winning football games.
Yeah, I think this is the right decision for both sides. I think Cleveland needs a change of scenery. I would have moved on from Andrew Berry too. He's not a terrible drafter, but the Deshaun Watson contract is kind of hamstrung this team and their ability to collect talent and retain talent. Like their offensive line, which 3 or 4 years ago was a serious asset, which even throughout their entire tenure, like the last like 15, 20 years, like they've always had like weirdly good offensive lines, which shows that just because you have pass protection doesn't mean you're good. Because they once had Joe Thomas and Mitchell Schwartz both manning tackle positions at the same time, and they couldn't even make the
Yeah.
playoffs. Like, that's insanity. That was arguably the best tackle duo in football at the time. But I think this is the right decision. Cleveland, I think, just needs a new voice and head coach. Maybe a younger voice that's like ready to go in and reinvigorate. I just don't think if they hire Jim Schwartz, like I wouldn't like they got to hire like a higher ceiling pick. Like Jim Schwartz might get the job because he's the DC, and that's a very high
Yeah.
has been a
It
very
has
high
head coaching
performing unit.
experience. I mean, he took the
Yeah,
Lions to the playoffs when they were
yeah,
still a laughing stock. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would not hire Jim Schwartz. I think Jim Schwartz is not a fit, but they might hire him. I would have rather have had them retain Stefanski than hire Jim Schwartz, just because like I don't really understand what you're gaining from it. The Browns would
mhm.
probably go for the high ceiling, like almost like this year's Liam Cohen, which I know that's easy to say. Everyone should go for Liam Cohen or the high ceiling option because, like, of course, you want the young guy, offensive
Yeah,
minded, that's going to be around for 20 years. But I think Cleveland, they just need they need juice in that offense. That's what I'm trying to say. Like that defense is good. It has Miles Garrett, it has a few other pieces that are really talented. They need
yeah,
someone to
Denzel
boost that
Ward, yeah,
offense. Yeah, they need to boost
Tyson
that
Campbell.
offense. And then for Stefanski, I think Stefanski I'm almost viewing this as a mercy fire because like I think he kind of wanted to leave, but he didn't want to resign to leave money on the table. And
Yeah,
now this will allow him to take another head coaching job. If he wants to take the Giants job, he'll probably get it if he's offered or if he interviews. But I think this is the right move for both sides. But we got to see where Cleveland goes with this replacement.
for sure, for sure. And the Browns to me are an interesting team because one side of the ball, I think they're in a really good position. Like they had the best pass defense in football this year statistically. Obviously, Miles Garrett, you could argue he's in the conversation for the best player in the NFL. Congratulations to Miles for breaking the single season sack record. Although I think Joe Burrow took a little bit of a dive on that play, but that's neither here nor there. But offensively, it's just not a lot. I mean, we don't know who their quarterback is. I don't know. I don't think their starting quarterback week one is on the roster. Like Shador Sanders did not. I know they won their last two games. He did not play well when he started by and large. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel is not the answer. So you don't have a quarterback. You're picking fifth. So I feel like Mendoza will be gone. Maybe Dante Moore falls after his performance last night. So it's a very precarious spot. But I think Stefanski did all he could with that organization. All right, next one, Lucas. Speaking of bad organizations, the Las Vegas Raiders move on from former Super Bowl winning coach Pete Carroll after just one season. And that season was, I mean, it depends how you look at it. From given the fact that some people thought they'd be a decent team this year, it was a disaster. They were 3-14, but they did get the first overall pick and are in prime position to get Fernando Mendoza, finally get some respectability under center for the first time since maybe Derek Carr in a couple of years there in the 2010s. Um, this was obvious, Lucas. We saw this coming. Pete Carroll, I just think he's too old to be a head coach at this point. He's had a great career, but at a certain point, when it goes, it goes, and it went. And like the last couple Seattle years, like they go 9-8, and I think it's pretty telling that just 2 years later, they're the one seed now in the NFC. I mean, last year they missed the playoffs, but they won more games last year than they did in any of Pete Carroll's last three seasons there. So great coach at one time. I actually like the hire. You and I disagree with this. I like the hire from the sense that like you're trying to instill a culture, you're trying to bring a floor to your team. I've been winning 8 games this year and being like a frisky team on the outside looking in. That they didn't come close to that. They were a train wreck. They were the worst team in football record wise and eye test wise. Um, and it'll be interesting to see what Mark Davis and I guess Tom Brady do to bring in a new head coach. And because this is a team that has had the least stability at head coach in the NFL over the last handful of years. Since 2021, since the start of the 2021 season, they have had 5 head coaches. They had John Gruden, and obviously he had to resign due to the email controversy. He had Rich Bisaccia, who took him to the playoffs. He's now the special teams coordinator in Green Bay. You had Josh McDaniels. That was a disaster. You had Antonio Pierce. That was a disaster from the get-go. And then obviously Pete Carroll, you thought, okay, maybe he'd at least like bring them back to some sort of relevancy, and they were even worse. So it wasn't all Carroll's fault. The roster stunk. I don't think it was a great situation, but the Chip Kelly hire was idiotic from the beginning. I never understood it, and it was made even worse by the results on the field. And we'll see. We'll see who's coaching the silver and black in 2026.
Yeah, this is the right move. I just didn't like the hire from the
Yeah,
get-go. It was just a
I
weird
did, but
fit.
like obviously I was wrong. So
Again, if the only goal was to give them some respectability and culture at the time, like maybe, but we all knew at the time the Raiders didn't have the roster to compete for playoff games. That defense was atrocious, and that offense had pieces, but question marks at quarterback. Like if Pete Carroll was going to take another job, it needed to be a roster that was more ready to win. I just thought that was maybe a 6 or 7 win roster. That was unintentional, but I had to do it anyways.
yeah,
But
I get it.
and like they ended up winning 3 games because Pete Carroll did not fix the culture. If anything, he made it worse. Hired Chip Kelly. That hire made no sense. Kind of just coincide. It just collides with Pete Carroll's traditional philosophy in Seattle, but he made the decision. This is the right decision to fire him. Mark Davis, generally pretty cash poor, but ever since he sold a stake in the team, including to Tom Brady, really opened up his wallet, so he's willing to pay a bunch of coaches to not coach for his team.
Yeah, I mean it's a disaster. I mean, like I said, they're a team like unlike Mark Davis, I do think he wants to win games. Doesn't make him a good owner, but like that separates him from like the Jimmy Haslams and the Woody Johnsons and the some of those other owners like Dan Snyder when he was in Washington. Um, we'll see. I mean, they're going to have Mendoza in all likelihood. We'll see if they bring in an offensive guy, a defensive guy, and for their sake, not for our sake, because we're Chiefs, we cover the Chiefs, but for their sake, they hope they actually have some stability at the head coach position for the first time in quite a while. All right, Lucas. Thank goodness for Michael Bidwill making the right decision, which we did not expect him to do. The last one on Black Monday, the Arizona Cardinals made the obvious decision to fire Jonathan Gannon after 3 seasons. The Cardinals this year, I think, were the biggest, given expectations. Like they were a disaster this year. A lot of people, I mean, you included, Lucas, picked them to make the playoffs, and I understood. Like I actually thought they were a solid team. I had them winning, I believe, 9 games this year and just barely missing out. So Gannon's tenure, he's there for 3 years. First year they go 4-13. Fine, whatever. The roster stunk. Last year they start 6-4. They're leading the NFC West, and then they completely gag it away to finish 8-9. And this year they start 2-0, and they won 1 game since week 2, including a loss to the Brian Callahan Titans, in which they lost that game in inconceivable fashion. That game, I think, kind of signaled the beginning of the end for Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. Just not a very good head coach. I think he'll go be a DC somewhere. But a guy who I think ever since I saw those videos, his first year there when they were doing like Hard Knocks or something, and he was giving that weird speech about like, oh, who took the bus to work or something like that. That kind of gave me a wrong vibe. Like that's not someone who should be leading a locker room of men. Um, the Cardinals this year were. I'm not saying they were a great team, 1 through 53, but my goodness, they were better than 3-14. This was an obvious choice. Michael Bidwill clearly made the correct decision. There was some smoke that he'd be coming back. I thought that'd be a catastrophic failure. But they made an obvious choice, an obvious choice.
Yeah, this was very clear as day. I didn't know if Micah Bidwell was going to be cheap enough to actually fire him, but full credit. This is the right move. Just didn't love the fit from the start. Didn't think it was awful, but obviously that video of Hard Knocks didn't inspire a lot of confidence. Didn't really prove he could be a leader of men, which is probably the most important aspect of a head coach is being a leader of men and riling up the troops. Didn't inspire a lot of confidence, but going for a little side tangent about his replacement. Out of all the potential like head coaching candidates the team fits, my number one favorite is actually with the Cardinals. Like my overall fit. Like if I had to pick the dream candidate
Really?
realistically for every team, it would be Chris Shula to the Cardinals. And you might
Ah,
be like,
okay.
why is that? Well, think about it logically. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, are from the same offensive system generally. And then Clint Kubiak spent 1 year in San Francisco as the pass game coordinator, so he has the same offensive philosophy as well. So why not hire the Rams defensive coordinator, Chris Shula, who has spent the past few years going up against McVay's offense in practice every single day? Why not hire him to be the defensive head coach or the head coach? And so now you have a defense that's tailor made, whose system is tailor made, excuse me, to go up against the 3 offenses in your division that are all pretty good when healthy.
Yeah, for sure. I actually my prediction, I believe I had Jesse Minter of the Chargers going there,
Yep.
another defensive coach. I feel like they're going to get a defensive coach. Feels like a lot of the candidates are defensive coordinators, with the exception of Kubiak, maybe McDaniel if they get him a job. Of course, Brian Flores is out there. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a team that I do think has some pieces. Definitely is better. I mean, they have maybe the best tight end in football. They have a defense that, they have some pieces defensively. Josh Sweat, Garrett Williams at corner. Buda Baker obviously has been a really good player for a long time. Jalen Thompson, so a solid safety duo. Quarterback's a question mark. I mean, obviously Jacoby Brissett's not the answer. Kyler Murray, I'd be stunned if he's there. Maybe it was Gannon or Kyler. I think Kyler's probably gone. So it'll be interesting to see what they do at quarterback. But yeah, this was an easy choice. Gannon could not come back. It'd be a case of I'd lose the fan base before the season started. All right, Lucas, let's go to the most notable one. This happened on Tuesday. After 18 Baltimore, mostly great seasons in Baltimore, the Ravens have moved on from John Harbaugh. John Harbaugh, who reached the mountaintop in 2012, winning Super Bowl 47, went to 4 AFC championship games, was the 1 seed twice, won a lot of games in Baltimore, went to the playoffs. I believe went to the playoffs quite a bit, went to the playoffs more than he didn't. But I felt like whoever lost the Sunday night game, this was going to happen. And if Tyler Loop made that field goal, I think Mike Tomlin is probably moved on from, but he didn't. So it's John Harbaugh looking for a new job. I felt like this was coming throughout the year, like when they start 1-5, and then they blow that game against New England in Week 16, then they beat Green Bay and the Steelers lose. It's like, okay, maybe they get the playoffs. Harbaugh can save his job. Not to be. I think Harbaugh is easily the best coach of the 6 coaches that were moved on from. Great career. We'll get another job. We're likely the Giants are looking like a team that's the leader in the clubhouse at this moment. We'll see what happens. We'll see if any playoff teams move on from their coaches, if they have an unceremonious exit. But look, Harbaugh accomplished a lot with the Ravens, but things run their course, and his tenure in Baltimore run its course. 18 years is a long time. This is somewhat similar to Andy Reid in Philadelphia, where, yeah, he's a great coach for a long time, but the ending was just not good. Andy Reid went 4-12 his last year in Philly. And they missed the playoffs with a team that a lot of people in the preseason predicted to not only get to, but win the Super Bowl. And they couldn't even win 9 games. So look, Harbaugh will get another job, but like I said, this thing, it was time for a change in Baltimore, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It was time. Like I was saying for the past few weeks, I think when we did our like fire or not fire predictions like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think I was pretty much said that like whoever did not win the AFC North was going to get fired or not be there next year. And looks like that prediction was correct. I forgot which team I thought was going to win at the time, but
you thought the Ravens were going to win, I think. So you thought
yeah,
Tomlin
okay, yeah,
was out,
yeah,
Harbaugh would
exactly.
stay.
I was wrong on that front, but I was like hedging basically whoever finishes second is going to not win it. I actually have a funny story because I pretty much agree it was time. It was time to move on. Like he's a good coach, but doesn't mean he's going to be a good coach every year, and he needs to change the scenery. Baltimore needs a new voice. I actually was out on the town in Minneapolis last night, and I was in a bar with one of my buddies of mine, and then because I have a sixth sense when I see like anything related to my teams, like I just kind of like see it kind of like a baby, like a mother bear looking at its baby bear. And I saw a guy wearing a Patrick Mahomes jersey across the bar, and I went up and I tapped him on the shoulder, like, "Hey, dude, I love your jersey. I'm a Chiefs fan." We took a picture. Turns out he's a Ravens fan, and it was like his fantasy punishment or something like that. But he said he had a lot of respect for the Chiefs and didn't really view it as a punishment. But he was talking my ear off about how it was time for Harbaugh to go on or Harbaugh to go. So this is the right decision. I promise you, Ravens fans agree. But Baltimore needs to make the right hire. Like Harbaugh is not an elite coach, but you could easily do worse. So the Ravens need to be very wise.
Yeah, I think he was at one point. He isn't anymore. But yeah, it's rare where a quarterback of Lamar Jackson's caliber has a coach, a quarterback like a top 5 quarterback in the league has an open coaching vacancy. Like that's easily the most desirable job. There's rumors that they could hire Brian Flores as the head coach, and then Mike McDaniel as the OC. We'll get to Mike McDaniel here pretty shortly. That'd be scary for the rest of the league. I think the Ravens could get back to what they were in 2023 if that was the case. But we'll see what happens. All right, last one. Miami Dolphins. Lucas is stepping away for a bit, so I'm going to ramble on here. This one kind of came out of left field on Thursday. The Miami Dolphins fire head coach Mike McDaniel after 4 seasons with the team. McDaniel's tenure got up to a promising start. They made the playoffs each of his first 2 years. The high point was in 2023 when they had one of the best offenses in the league, but obviously that season came to an unceremonious end. They lost their last 3 games, including that blowout loss to the Chiefs in that insanely cold weather game. But the last 2 years kind of began the writing on the wall. Last year they go 8-9. This year they go 7-10, and I think that record is not quite indicative of how their season went. They started horribly. They started 1-6. The 6th of those losses was an embarrassing blowout loss to the Browns of all teams. And then so they're 2-7. They split their next 2 games, and then McDaniel deserves credit for this. They won 4 games in a row to kind of get back to some semblance of relevancy. They beat the Bills. They beat the Commanders. They beat the Saints. No, they won 5 in a row. They beat the Bills. They beat the Commanders. They beat the Saints, and they beat the Jets. 4 wins in a 5-week stretch, to correct myself there. So they won 7 games after starting horribly, but it looked for all the evidence pointed to McDaniel being back in later stages of the season. And as the week went on, it looked like he'd be their head coach next year. Not to be. He was fired on Thursday. He will get some head coaching interviews, but it looks like he'll likely be an offensive coordinator somewhere. I was actually surprised by this, Lucas. I think it was a case of early in the year, like I thought McDaniel was a dead man walking, but I thought he did enough to keep his job. But Stephen Ross disagreed.
Yeah, this was weird. It's one of those where you could look
The
at it.
timing was very weird.
Yeah, the timing was weird, but like here's what I really don't like. Unless you have an established head coach that you know is not going to go anywhere, kind of like if you have an Andy Reid or a Sean McVay, like those caliber of coaches, if you fire the GM, it's almost like cutting the head off the snake. Like it's very rare to fire just the GM and then bring in a new GM, but not touch the coach. And it seems like not long after, I don't know if it was what the specific timeline was, but the Dolphins just hired their new GM, Eric Sullivan, or
Eric Sullivan from the Packers. Yeah.
And I imagine part of the deal was like, hey, with Sullivan, like if you want to hire me, because the Dolphins paid a lot of money to Troy Aikman to consult. If you want me to be the GM, I have to be able to pick my coach. And I don't know anything for a fact. I don't know if there's been any reports, but I imagine there was like, hey, like you got to get rid of the head coach if I want to take the GM job because I want my own guy to be the coach. We'll see if he hires a Packer guy to be the head coach of the Dolphins, but we know it's not going to be Mike McDaniel. I think he needs to take a year or 2 to be out an offensive coordinator, but I think he deserves to get rehired again in like 2 to 3 years because he did have good enough of a tenure to warrant that.
Yeah, they made the playoffs twice. His first 2 years, like I said, promising start, unceremonious end. I do think he's a really good offensive mind. I do have questions about him as a leader of men, as a guy who can lead a locker room of NFL players. I think that's where he really came up short. But from a play calling and offensive scheme standpoint, I think he's terrific. So I mean, any team would be lucky to have him as their offensive coordinator next year. If he goes to the Ravens with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, it could be pretty scary. I think the Ravens could have a bounce back year next year if that's the case. All right, excuse me. I had to cough a little bit there. All right, so that wraps up the coaching moves this offseason. Some somewhat surprising moves. Not surprising, the Colts announced they'd bring back Shane Steichen on Sunday. Right decision. The Bengals, to no surprise, are bringing back Zach Taylor. Wrong decision, but we all saw it coming. That Super Bowl appearance is going to buy him a lifetime contract after the Marvin Lewis tenure. The Bengals have had 2 head coaches since 2003, Lucas. That's insane. I mean, they've had like what? 6 really good seasons in that stretch, if that. 2 head coaches. Bonkers. Absolutely bonkers.
That's what happens that's what happens when your owner is the bad combination of incompetent, cheap, and afraid of change. Like,
yeah, he's like
good luck,
Mike
fans.
Brown's like Jimmy Haslam with a Super Bowl appearance. It's insane. And then the last one that Lucas, I disagreed with personally. I think you feel the same way. Todd Bowles will be back in Tampa next year. Look, I get it. This is the first year of his tenure. They missed the playoffs. Like they won the division each of his first 3 years there. The records in those years were 8-9, 9-8, and 10-7. Congrats. I guess they won 1 playoff game. against Philadelphia. And if you remember, the Eagles were basically dead on arrival in that game. Um, so like, I don't know. I would have moved on from bowls. Like anytime you go from 6-2 to missing the playoffs in the worst division in football, not great. Not great. I mean, if you just beat Quinn Ewers, you would be playing against the Rams right now. But Todd Bowles will be back. They're giving him another year. I don't have a lot of optimism, but we'll see how that works.
Yeah,
Obviously, they're going to have a new offensive coordinator as well,
yeah,
so maybe McDaniel goes there. So maybe that will help. But yeah,
yeah. I got what
that
I gotta tell you. I
what?
since my favorite NHL team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, so on Twitter I follow a lot of Tampa people.
Yeah,
Let's say the Bucks faithful do not agree with this decision. Just
no.
to be kind.
I'll say this though about the Bulls. I mean, their two best years there were 2023 when they won a playoff game, then last year when they won 10 games. So it wasn't like a complete bullshit division winner. What was the common denominator of those seasons? Really good offensive coordinators, Dave Canales and then Liam Cohen, both of whom are hosting playoff games this weekend. So they can somehow get Mike McDaniel in there. Maybe the Bucks can win the division again. But I just think Bowles is such a low ceiling coach. He's a decently high floor coach, but the ceiling is very low. I think there's a lot of evidence at that point. All right, Lucas, playoff preview time. We're going to go through the 6 games this weekend in order, starting with the games today, obviously, because it's got to go up before kickoff, 3:30 Central Time. So Panthers Rams in Charlotte. The Panthers in the playoffs for the first time since 2017. The Rams going on the road here. Look, I think the big talking point, the big argument for the Panthers in this game is they beat the Rams this year. They beat them in week 13. Stafford had 3 turnovers in that game. And Bryce Young had one of his best games of the season, made some really nice throws down the field, and the Panthers had probably the most impressive win of the year. Not even probably, definitely their most impressive win of the year. But I just think I don't see that happening again. The Rams played about as badly as you could play and still easily could have won that game. I think this is the least interesting playoff game from a suspense standpoint. I think the Rams are going to take it to them. They're the far better team. Stafford and Young, I think, is the biggest quarterback gap of any of the 6 matchups this weekend. Um, the Panthers defensively, like one thing they do have is they have good corners with J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson, which can match up against the Rams receivers. But I don't know if that'll be enough. And obviously, Derek Brown is a menace up front. I don't think that'll be enough. Like, I think the Panthers will do enough, almost enough defensively. Like, they'll keep him in the game for a little bit, but I think the dam's eventually going to break. I don't believe in Bryce Young against this defense. He did play well against them last time, but I trust Chris Shula to make some adjustments to make his life difficult. And the Panthers, in terms of offensive personnel, besides Dowdle, Hubbard, and McMillan, like, who on that offense do you really care about as a defensive coordinator? Like, Jalen Coker? Like, who? Who is it? They have no tight ends that scare you. Their offensive line is not particularly good. I think the Rams start the playoffs out with a pretty easy win.
I agree, and a lot of like Panthers fans are going to be like, "Well, we beat them in week 13. Like that means we should win now." I'm like, no, that's not how that works. That was just a weird. I'm going to talk a little bit about that matchup because it's important because it was week 13, so it was recent
Yeah.
enough where it's somewhat relevant. But the main matchup in this game I'm looking for is the Rams' offensive line is not great. Panthers don't exactly have a strong pass rush outside of Derek Brown. So
Yeah.
I'm not looking at like, oh, the Panthers could expose their biggest flaw. The main reason the Panthers won that game is that Matthew Stafford was just weirdly awful in that game. He was only under pressure on 4 of 30 dropbacks. Like that's insane. And his time to throw on the clean dropbacks were 2.75. 2.75 is not exactly quick. And the fact that like the Panthers could not get home at all, we thought the Chiefs pass rush was bad. Watch that Panthers film against the Rams. But like when he was under pressure, bad stuff happened because he was 1 and 2 for 4 yards and had a fumble. He also threw 2 interceptions when kept clean. Like I just don't think that's going to happen again with Stafford, who's going to finish top 2 in MVP race in the MVP ballot or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like Stafford was under pressure 40% of dropbacks or 50% of dropbacks. And like, hey, it's harder to play when pass rushers are in your face. He was kept clean on 87% of his snaps and still played pretty poorly. If that figure is close to 87% again, that's not going to happen again. Sean McVay is not going to goof around. But we'll see. They play the games for a reason. I'm going to take the Rams, and I think they're going to win like by 15 points.
Yeah, and look, the Panthers, regardless how this game goes, their season wasn't a success. I think not many people predicted them to be in the playoffs. I think a lot it was either the Bucks. I mean, some people, Nick Wright, were picking the Bucks to go to the Super Bowl in the preseason, and then the Falcons were a fairly popular pick to win the division as well. So the Panthers definitely overachieved this year. I think Dave Canales has done a nice job there, given where they were when he arrived. I don't believe in Bryce Young in the slightest. I honestly think it's better if they lose this game. Um, any plays mediocre to poor, because if they somehow win, and even if they lose and he plays really well, they'll be like, Bryce is our guy, 4-year contract extension, and that'd be a disaster from the word go. So yeah, I mean, the Panthers are obviously the worst team in the playoffs. I think the Rams are as good as a 5 seed as you'll see. I think this could potentially be a bloodbath. All right, so we both take the Rams. Let's go to the game tonight. NFC North matchup: Bears Packers for the third time since Week 14. Jordan Love is back. His first action since the last Bears Packers game, where he was knocked out with a concussion. The Packers are as healthy as they could possibly be. Obviously, the big names of Micah Parsons and Tucker Kraft and Devontae Wyatt are out for the year, so they won't be coming back anytime soon. But Zach Thomas back, Evan Williams is back. The receivers are all healthy. So the Packers are as healthy as they've been in quite some time. That Denver game was really just kind of a battlefield in terms of injuries back in Week 15. And obviously the Packers, when they were at full strength, or close to full strength, beat the Bears in Lambeau in Week 14, and then should have beat the Bears if Romeo Doubs recovered an onside kick with basically their JV team in Week 16. So from that argument, I think it bodes pretty well for Green Bay. And also, both these teams enter this game on losing streaks. The Bears have lost their last 2 games. They lose that game to Detroit last week. And then the Packers are on a 4-game losing streak. They lose to Denver. They lose, of course, that insane Bears game. They lose to the Ravens. And then this past week, they didn't really try to win. I mean, they played Clayton Tune in that game. They played a bunch of backups against Minnesota, kind of lied down. So that from that argument, like they're more rested than Chicago is, where Chicago was playing their starters. I have a good feeling about the Packers in this game. I feel like they, despite their injury issues and their limitations to where their roster currently is, I think they're as good, if not better, than Chicago. I think it depends if Love's rusty or not. If Love's rusty, I think it could not be great. But if Love's ready to go, I think the Packers win. I think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means. I think it will be down to the wire game. But I like Green Bay to win as a 7 seed for the second time in 3 years in Chicago and just rip the hearts out of Bears fans once more. The Bears, to me, feel like a year away. I think the biggest issue with the Bears is their defense is awful when not creating turnovers. I think the Packers will move the ball in this game. So give me Green Bay to win on the road and make Chicago a very unhappy place tonight.
Yeah. So one specific key that I'm looking for in this game for Chicago is, can they establish the run? I'm not necessarily a big establish the run type of guy, but I am a believer in exposing or accentuating your strengths, or I'm not sure if I'm using that word right, but glowing up your strengths. And the Bears have proven that their run game can be dominant. And the Packers' run defense is not rancid, but it's not good either. So,
Yeah.
And the weather's apparently going to be very not ideal if you enjoy being warm and dry. So we'll see how it plays out. I am actually going to go with the Packers too. Like, this is a game I'm like weirdly confident in. I'm going to take the Packers to win within 1 score. I'm not going to predict a specific score because like it's football. Like anything within 8 points with 1 possession.
Yeah, that's too
Green
tough.
Bay. This is a game that I think is going to be competitive in the 4th. But Matt LaFleur has proven that like when he's on as an offensive mind, his team could come out swinging. Like that Dallas game 2 years ago when they just went into Jerry World to embarrass the Cowboys. Like that was a great game plan for Matt LaFleur, and then Jordan Love absolutely cooked. That defense in Chicago is not.
It's bad.
Good.
It's not good. Exactly. We're not creating turnovers. Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't care if they don't Tucker Kraft or Micah Parsons. If Jordan Love is like solid in this game, like he can't be mediocre, but if he's like better than mediocre, like solid, I think Green Bay wins this game. I don't really care if it's the 7 versus the 2. These 2 teams have played twice, very competitive matchups, and this is the 3rd time they played, of course. So I don't care about the seeding. I don't care about the records. This is going to be a competitive game.
Yeah, and also the Bears are a really weak 2 seed. They're 11-6, which is worse than you would expect from a 2 seed. I also think Love's better than Williams. I think the Packers have the quarterback advantage in this game. Obviously, Ben Johnson, as good as he's been this year, has not coached in a playoff game before. So I think, like I said, the Bears. I think the Bears' key is running the ball well because the last meaningful game the Packers played against the Ravens, I mean, Derrick Henry just went off against them, and the Bears' run game has been their strength offensively this year, behind a really good offensive line, in Johnson's scheme with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai. So if they can get that going, I think they have a shot. But I don't know. I like the Packers in this one, to go on the road and beat them. All right, let's go to the Sunday triple header. Let's go to the first game Sunday. Probably the most talked about game going into this weekend. The Jacksonville Jaguars against the Buffalo Bills in Duval. The Bills are road favorites as of this moment. And from what I've noticed, a lot, actually, frankly, most people are picking the Jaguars to win this game. And I understand it because they're coming in on an 8-game winning streak. They're dominating teams. Trevor Lawrence is playing the best football of his career to this point. Defensively, they're playing really well. They run the ball well. Travis Etienne ran for over 1,000 yards this year. From a receiving standpoint, like they don't really have one guy. Like they don't have a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson or a Puka Nakua, a guy who's just gonna dominate the game. They have a lot of good complementary pieces. Jacoby Myers has been really good since coming over. Brian Thomas Jr. has taken a step back after last season, but he's still a quality receiver. Brenton Strange is a decent tight end. Parker Washington is at a nice year. And Lawrence, to his credit, has played really well. I was starting to get some real doubts about him being a franchise quarterback. But during this winning streak, he had, other than a bad game against the Cardinals, he's been awesome. He's been on it. Um, with that being said, I'm taking the Bills to win on the road. And here's why. Experience. The Bills have played have been a mainstay in the postseason over the last 5 years. They've been to the AFC Championship twice. Josh Allen has played in a ton of playoff games, whereas this Jaguars team is new on the scene. I mean, they're a team that not many people expected to be in this position. They have a rookie head coach. They have a lot of guys who have not played in the playoffs where Lawrence has, but that was a few years ago at this point. I'm going to take the more experienced team. I'm going to take the better quarterback in this game. Um, I think the big key for Buffalo is getting a lead early and making Lawrence come from behind. Don't make it a game where they're just giving the ball to ETN, and running it down their throats because the Bills' run defense is putrid. It's awful. It's one of the worst in the league. So if they can get ahead and make this a passing game for Jacksonville, as well as Lawrence has played, I'd rather this be a game where Trevor Lawrence tries to beat you than them just running downhill with ETN, given how poor the Bills' run defense is. Now their pass defense isn't great either, but they have a respectable secondary. Their corners, they have solid corners in Benford and Taron Johnson. Um, so I don't know. I just think it's gonna be a close game. I think in a vacuum, Jacksonville has been the better team this year. But I've been the Bills guy in this podcast. I've been the one who's like, they're gonna come out of it. They're gonna be the team that gets it done. It's their year. And look, them being a 6 seed is not ideal, but I think they get it off. I think they get it started off with a win in Duval.
Yeah, I agree. I think Buffalo's going to win. Like this is one of those where like I'm going to pick Buffalo just because I think they have the best player in the playoff field right now, and that's Josh
Yeah.
Allen. But the key for Buffalo is can they protect him? The Jaguars have a good defense, but like their defense is really predicated on causing chaos, which Josh Allen is not a guy who's scared of chaos. So if they can avoid chaos in this game, I think but that'll be a big advantage for Buffalo. And in terms of the other side of the ball, like it's going to be tough just because I don't really have a ton of faith in Sean McDermott, but
Yeah, that's a problem.
that's really nervous right now because if we're picking the Bills because Liam Cohen versus Sean McDermott, it's very clear who's on the better end of that deal. But I'm currently looking up just something quick. Sean McDermott loves to run zone, and I'm looking at all the underlying numbers right now. It appears that the Jaguars are better against man coverage in their
Mhm.
passing game. So that could be an advantage. Can Trevor Lawrence be patient enough to take advantage of zone instead of going for the kill shot? Because the William Cohen is very good at getting his receivers open versus man. But if it's for zone, that could be a little bit of a problem. It'd also make it harder for Trevor Lawrence to scramble, who's not the most scramble friendly quarterback, but he has mobility when he wants to use it. But overall, the most important part of this game is, can the Bills behave themselves on offense? Stick to the run game. Don't turn the ball over a lot and let them dictate the game. Don't give the Jaguars an extra free 2 or 3 possessions, because that's how the Jags were winning early in the year, is they forced 3 turnovers like each of the first 4 games. So don't turn the ball over. Keep Josh Allen clean, and then stay disciplined in your zone defense, and we'll see. Because the Jaguars' offense, they're moving the ball, but the receivers aren't super talented. It's like Jacoby Myers, Parker Washington, Brian Thomas Jr., I think, has been hurt, but he hasn't been that big of a factor.
Yeah.
It's mostly been scheme. So I think the secondary for the Bills has to remain disciplined. But if they don't turn the ball over, I think they'll win this game. I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means. Like, I think if it's going to be a blowout, Jacksonville's more likely to win by double digits. But I think if it's close, I'm going to take the team with the bigger X factor, and that's the Bills.
Yeah, and of course, Cook obviously led the league in rushing this year. The Bills' passing game is a bit of a concern with their receivers. I mean, besides Khalil Shakir, their receivers are just not that good. But they do have good tight ends in Kincaid and Knox. They do have a good enough offensive line to neutralize Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen and that Jaguars front. I'm going with the experience. Like I said, I'm going with the experience. I'm going with the best player in this game. So give me Buffalo. All right, let's go to the late afternoon game on Sunday. The Philadelphia Eagles play host to the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers did have an opportunity to get a first-round bye, but they responded by scoring 3 points at home against Seattle, so they have to go to Philadelphia. To me, this is the biggest coin flip, Lucas, because the Eagles, on one side of the ball, defensively, they look ready to win another championship. Their last meaningful game defensively, they held Buffalo to 12 points. They held the Raiders. Look, I get it's the Raiders, but it's still an NFL team, to less than 100 total yards of offense since week 8, not including week 18. From week 8 to week 17, so the meaningful games that they played, Philadelphia allowed the least amount of points in the NFL defensively. So I trust their defense against the Niners offense that is, look, statistically very good, but is beat up. On the other hand, the Eagles offense has been the story this year with how ineffective they've been with, their scheme, with Kevin Patullo's scheme just not being good, the prevent offense that they play when they get leads, Jalen Hurts' struggles at times this year. So I think there's good arguments either way. However, I just think the 49ers defense is so just beat up. I don't think it's going to matter. I think Philadelphia will score some points in this game. I could see them getting to 24. And with how good their defense is played, I think that'll be enough to win. And I respect Robert Saleh as a defensive coordinator. They just don't have the talent on that side of the ball. Honest to God, I'd struggle to name 5 starters on the 49ers defense. It's that bleak. And they have no pass rush at all. It looks like Lane Johnson is going to be back for this game up front for Philadelphia. They had the least amount of sacks in the NFL this year. They're basically down to third string linebackers at this point because Bethune, who was the backup to Fred Warner, got hurt against Seattle. Their secondary is not particularly good outside of Diamador Lenore. It's just not a good defense. It's not a talented defense. So I think the Eagles will do enough. And I like them winning this game at home. The Eagles have not lost a home playoff game in the Jalen Hurts era, and I think that continues. I think the Niners, when healthy, are a really good team. I just think it's going to catch up to them in this game. And offensively, I think they'll put up a fight, but I think the Eagles' defense will make just enough stops to win the game. So give me Philly. I think the big key for San Francisco is, like I said, same for Buffalo, get out to a lead and make it to where Philadelphia has to beat you with Jalen Hurts throwing the ball. And if they don't do that, I think it might be I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but it could be an unfortunate afternoon for the Niners.
Yeah, I'm going to take Philadelphia too, but I could easily see a game where Kyle Shanahan just comes out firing with a game plan to beat up Vic Fangio's talented defense. I could see this going the other way because the Eagles' offense has been highly inconsistent. They've been better down the stretch to an extent.
Well, I mean, their last meaningful game, they had 17 yards of offense and a half against a defense that's not very good. So
that's why I said to an extent. But this is a game where I think if the Niners have to win, it's easy to say it. They have to win on their offense. Kyle Shanahan has to outcoach Vic Fangio in this game. Like, if it's equal or Fangio's the better coach, the 49ers are cooked. There's no path to victory because
Mhm.
the Eagles have proven they will go into a very conservative offense to protect the lead, and their defense is good enough to justify that. So
Mhm.
Kyle Shanahan has to come out with a great game plan in this game. If he doesn't, Niners are going home. If he comes out and he's outcoached significantly by Fangio, they're going to lose by a lot of points.
And I trust Shanahan. But the quiet thing for the Niners is the receiving core is beat up. It's Jawan Jennings. Like we'll see if Pearsall plays. He's been out. It's Kendrick Bourne. It's Demarcus Robinson. It's just not a great unit. Kittle's still a really good tight end. Obviously McCaffrey he's in a weird year because he leads the league in all-purpose yards, but a lot of that's been as a receiver. A lot of his production's been as a receiver. He ran for over 1,000 yards, but McCaffrey was not an efficient runner this year. He averaged less than 4 yards per carry, so it wasn't an efficient 1,000 yards. So this is not the Christian McCaffrey that won Offensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. I just think the Niners, like, this isn't 2 years ago where they had like the all-star team on offense. It's a reduced version of that. um and I like Philadelphia. It doesn't mean their offense is fixed, but I like them to win this game. All right, let's go to Sunday Night Football. Patriots Chargers in Foxborough. Excuse me. Man, I'll just go right to it. I think the Patriots are gonna win. I don't trust the Chargers in this spot. I don't like the way they're entering the playoffs. They had that game against Houston where they could have won, but they fell behind early. They didn't do enough to get out of it. Then last week they didn't play their starters, so it doesn't really matter. The big issue for me is the Chargers offensive line. I just think it's at a certain point it's too much to overcome. And it's not like the Patriots have an overwhelming pass rush. Like they have a good front, don't get me wrong. But it's I don't think it matters. I think the Chargers line is so bad that if you play a competent front, Herbert's going to be under siege. He's going to be forced to rush his throws. Um, and the Chargers could go off script pretty early here because of their offensive line. Now, the positive side is the Chargers do have a really good defense. So I do think they could keep him in the game. New England, as well as Drake May's played this year, is not overwhelming in terms of weaponry, like Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams, Hunter Henry at tight end, obviously Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson at running back. So they have some weapons. They have some, solid pieces there. Keyshawn Booty as well. And of course, Drake May, who was named second team All Pro as a quarterback this week. But they do have a poor offensive line. The Chargers can get after the quarterback with Tule Poliato. I can't pronounce his last name. Number 45. Tule Poliato. Obviously, Khalil Mack out of his prime, but still a Hall of Fame edge rusher. The linebackers, in Henley and Perryman are pretty good. Obviously, Derwin James is excellent at safety. So I think the Chargers can keep him in it. I just don't believe in their offense. I think it's going to be another game for Herbert in the playoffs where, look, it won't be the disaster against Houston last year, but if you put Christian Gonzalez on McConkey and force Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston to beat you, it could be a long night, especially with how bad the Chargers offensive line is. I think it's gonna be a low scoring game because the Chargers, like I said, they're good defensively. They're so limited offensively. Give me New England winning like 16-13. I think their offense will struggle a little bit, but I don't know if the Chargers are good enough to take advantage of it.
This is going to be a game that the Chargers have to force turnovers when they're on defense.
Yeah, they're gonna need
I
some things to go
yeah.
their way.
Yeah, the Chargers are one of the two teams in the AFC I don't think are capable of making a Super Bowl run. So they're just going to have to get all of the lucky bounces in their favor. A tipped interception, a fumble that slips out of Drake May's hands, something like that. Because I think if this is an even turnover margin game, I think the Chargers are going to lose. I just don't see a path to victory. But it's possible that rookie or second year Drake May and first year coach in New England, Mike Vrabel, they have a hiccup. But we'll see. I'm going to take the Patriots to win, of course. But if the Chargers are going to win, Herbert's going to have to play well. Like there's
Yeah,
no path to victory where Herbert is not playing elite. But that's why they play the games. I'm going to take the Patriots. I think they win like 23-17, something like that.
I got to be honest. If the Chargers had Alton Slater, I might take him to win this game. But they don't, and their offensive line is really reaping the consequences. All right, last game: Monday Night Football, a game that might also be low scoring. Steelers Texans on ESPN. Aaron Rodgers back in the playoffs. The Texans, of course, for the first time in their franchise's history, are not playing the first playoff game. Usually the Texans are playing in about 4 hours. Not the case this year. They're on Monday Night Football. The Texans, obviously, I think I would argue the best defense in football against a Pittsburgh offense that statistically is a decent offense, but eye test wise is pretty limited in what they do. But there are some stats in Pittsburgh's favor. First of all, they have won, I believe, 23 consecutive home Monday Night Football games. Well, they're at home, and the game is on Monday Night Football. They are a home underdog. Mike Tomlin is fantastic as a home underdog. That was proven last week. They were home underdog against the Ravens, and they won. I believe they are 2-1 as home dogs this year, with wins against Baltimore and Indianapolis, the loss against Buffalo. So that's the point in Pittsburgh's favor. They're also getting DK Metcalf back, which will be a huge boost. Another point in Pittsburgh's favor is the Texans' offense, not great. I mean, outside of Nico Collins, their weaponry is not particularly good. It's the rookies and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, Xavier Hutchinson, Schultz at tight end. Schultz is a decent tight end, but not someone who really scares you. Their running game is hit or miss. Their offensive line is better than it used to be, but it's still not a good offensive line. And Stroud has been an inconsistent quarterback over the last handful of years, or last 2 years, rather, since his rookie year. Sometimes he's really good. Sometimes he's really off, and he holds the ball too long. He's inaccurate with his throws. He makes poor decisions with the football. And one thing Pittsburgh does really well is create turnovers. They were among the league leaders in forced turnovers this season. So I think this can be close. I think a lot of people are predicting the Texans to win handily because they don't trust Pittsburgh's offense against the Texans defense, which I get. This is a game that I think, similar to the Chargers, I think Pittsburgh's going to need like a splash play. I think they're going to need to score on defense potentially. They might need to score on special teams, like a punt return or a kick return. I think they're going to need a play that's out of the ordinary, that's kind of lucky, because, like I said, their offense, even with Metcalf back, this Texans defense is so good that I think it can neutralize them. But one thing the Pittsburgh offense does well is that Rodgers gets rid of the ball faster than any quarterback in the league. Both of the running backs, in Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren, had over 1,000 all-purpose yards this year. Both of them are good receiving backs, so that could help neutralize the Texans' pass rush with Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. But the Texans also have really good corners. So even with Metcalf back, guys like Stingley and Lassiter you could put them on him, and it could be a fight to the death. And I don't think any of the other Steelers receivers are capable of beating man coverage. MVS, Calvin Austin, Adam Thielen at this stage of his career. So I think it's gonna be a game where you run the offense through Warren, you run the offense through Gainwell, you get the ball to Pat Freiermuth in the middle, because this might be a big Freiermuth game with how good the Texans corners are. But I think the Steelers are going to somehow find a way to win this game. I don't think they're the better team. I think this is my upset pick. I think the Steelers are clearly the inferior team here, but I don't know. This is pointing all towards a surprise Pittsburgh win. They're coming off a huge, huge win last Sunday night, whereas the Texans kind of quietly over the last 3 weeks. I mean, they barely beat the Raiders. They barely squeaked by the Chargers, and their offense was poor in that game for large stretches of it. And then last week they won, but they barely squeaked by Riley Leonard and the Colts at home. And I understand they took starters out, but still, that's not something that should happen. So the Texans kind of quietly are looking a little shaky heading into the playoffs, despite the fact that they have won. They're on a 9-game winning streak, but I don't know. I like the Steelers in this one. I think this is the only playoff game they win. Like I said, I don't think they're capable of going to the Super Bowl, but I think they're capable of winning this game, because the Texans' strengths and weaknesses kind of play into the Steelers' hands a little bit.
I think this might be the first game we disagree on. I'm going to take the Texans to win. Like my thinking with this game is the Texans have the best overall unit, and that is their defense. But the Steelers have maybe the bigger X factor quarterback. Like in a weird way, I trust like geriatric Aaron Rodgers to turn it on for a single game than I do maybe CJ Stroud, who's like 25.
Yeah.
So in that sense, I'm a little bit wary of my pick, but I'm going to take Houston to win. I think their defense can bully the Steelers offense. And I just think the Texans offense can maybe get 1 or 2 touchdowns against a Steelers defense that's not awful, but it's not
It's not
infallible.
great.
Like you
It's
can you,
fine. Like, yeah.
you get a few touchdown drives on them every game. So in that sense, I'm going to take Houston. I think Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter are going to go off on a very immobile Aaron Rodgers. But if Rodgers can turn back the clock for a single game, anything can happen. But I'm going to take Houston to win.
One thing I will say, quietly, the Steelers have a pretty good offensive line. Like, I think a lot of people associate the Steelers with like a bad offensive line because their line has been bad quite a bit over the last handful of years. They have a good young offensive line with Troy Fautanu and Zach Frazier at center, and Mason McCormick and Samawalo at guard. Left tackle is a bit of a question mark. They have a backup left tackle playing against, I believe Hunter lines up on the left side, so that's not ideal. But like it, I think the Steelers' offensive line is good enough to neutralize Houston's front to some degree. Like they're gonna get to Rodgers at some point. They're too good not to. Um, but I think it's gonna be the type of game that the Steelers win. Give me them winning like 19-16 or something, or 16-13 or something of that regard. 17-14. I think it's gonna be a close game. But I like Pittsburgh at home. So we had one disagreement. So we both took the Rams. Do you have anything to add in this game, Lucas, or should we get close to wrapping up here shortly?
Other than I echo what you said about their offensive line, it's probably the most underrated offensive line in the league.
It's good. It's a good offensive line. I mean, Rodgers is maybe the least mobile starter in the league, and he was sacked less than 30 times this year. So that's a good testament to how they played up front. So we both take the Rams handily. We both take the Packers to win as a 7 seed tonight. We both take the Bills, which is unpopular and among consensus, but we both take Buffalo. We both take Philadelphia at home. We both take New England at home, but our disagreement comes on Monday night. I'm taking Pittsburgh at home. You're taking Houston on the road. That about wraps it up. Luke and I will be back on Tuesday to recap Wild Card Weekend. That was. We'll see what happens.
Hold on. Do you want to make our Super Bowl predictions?
Oh, yes, of course. Sorry, Lucas. So my Super Bowl prediction coming out of the AFC. I've been saying it all year. I'm not coming off of it, even though they're a 6 seed. Give me the Buffalo Bills. Give me the best quarterback in the field. Give me the most experienced team in the postseason. So give me the Bills in the AFC, and then I'm going to take the Los Angeles Rams in the NFC. So I have a Super Bowl matchup between two teams that did not win their own division. I think that has to be a first. That has to be a first time in NFL history where the Super Bowl matchup is between two wild card teams. But that's my prediction. Give me the Rams, give me the Bills, and give me the Rams winning and Matthew Stafford winning Super Bowl MVP.
Well, this is very anticlimactic. Like, I think
Oh, is that yours?
I
Oh
think
my God.
Rams over Bills. Like, I just think the Bills. Like, I understand they're a 6 seed. A lot of their fans are like trying to have their cake and eat it too. Like, Josh Allen's the best quarterback in football. Like, he's unstoppable. But like, also, our team isn't that good, and like, it's not his fault if we don't win. I'm like, my opinion is like, dude, like, I'd be saying the same thing if they were the Chiefs. Like if the Chiefs were the 7 seed, they'd be under pressure to go to at least go to the AFC Championship. This is not a hard playoff field. I don't look at any matchup for Buffalo and be like, like they're in a lot of trouble. Like this Jacksonville matchup realistically could be their hardest matchup in the AFC playoff field.
Yeah.
And like if they get past them in round 1, like who are they going to lose to? Like
they'll likely go to Denver, assuming the Chargers lose.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the championship game, New England probably. They play New England in Foxborough.
Houston, yeah.
Or Houston, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, look, Houston's been a house of horrors for that team. Like Josh Allen's been awful in that stadium the last handful of years. So that could be a problem. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Look, it's a quarterback league, and I'm taking the two best quarterbacks in the playoff field to get to the Super Bowl. I trust them the most. And I'm going with a team that's a coach quarterback combo that's won a championship before in McVay and Stafford, and then a coach quarterback combo that's been knocking on the doorstep for a long time in McDermott and Allen. And the boogeyman's gone. The Chiefs are gone. The Bengals, who also beat them, they're not in the playoffs. I just think it's all set up for them, even though they're the 6 seed. Like Jacksonville's not a very hard place to play. You're better than Denver. You should beat Bo Nix and the Broncos. And then we'll see who you play in the championship game. But yeah, I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I think they get there. I like them to get there, even though their roster is little diminished from what it used to be. All right, that wraps up our episode. Like I said, the NFL playoffs start in about 4 hours. The Rams and the Panthers get things started, and then you have the Bears and the Packers tonight. You got the triple header tomorrow. Then, of course, the Steelers and the Texans on Monday. Lucas, do you have any parting thoughts before we disperse?
I do not, but I'm glad the playoffs are here, but I'm not glad the Chiefs aren't here. So let me cope.
All righty. Well, maybe next year. We'll see if the Chiefs are back next year. But until then, thanks everybody. We'll see you on Tuesday.